Once again, good afternoon, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. For those who are still outside of this Medan room, once again, I'd like to kindly request to please enter the Medan room and please be seated. We are about to begin the last parallel session this afternoon. Thank you. Good afternoon and welcome to His Excellency Mr. Teten Mas Duki, Minister of Cooperatives and Small and Medium Enterprises of the Republic of Indonesia. Please kindly be seated. Om Swastiastu. This is Balinese welcome greetings, means may God bless all of us here. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Shalom, Namo Buddhaya, salam kebajikan. May peace be upon us, and once again, good afternoon, distinguished participants, guests, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the fourth and the last parallel thematic session of High-Level Forum on Multi-Stakeholder Partnerships 2024 on empowering micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises, strengthening microfinancing for inclusive and impactful development. Hosted by the Ministry of National Development Planning of Indonesia. Ladies and gentlemen, may we have your big round of applause for our host for this special event today. Please give your big round of applause. Thank you so much. And also applause for all of you who are still here until the last session today. We are truly honored to have such an esteemed audience here today, and welcome once again to all of you to Paradise Island of Bali. My name is Putu Desi, and I'm so honored to be your host for today's event. Before we begin, please allow me to extend our warmest welcome to our guest of honor, His Excellency Mr. Teten Mas Duki, Minister of Cooperatives and Small and Medium Enterprises of the Republic of Indonesia. Selamat sore, Bapak. Distinguished speakers and also moderator, all our distinguished delegates and participants of the High-Level Forum on Multi-Stakeholder Partnerships 2024. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Ministry of National Development Planning is hosting High-Level Forum on Multi-Stakeholder Partnerships 2024 in Bali International Convention Center. The forum is expected to serve as a platform for exchanging ideas, learning, and collaboration where multi-stakeholders can unite in the global efforts to ensure adherence to development effectiveness principles in bringing out a transformative change. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is my great pleasure to begin the session with keynote speech for today. And now, let us welcome on the stage His Excellency, Mr. Teten Mas Duki, Minister of Cooperatives and Small and Medium Enterprises of the Republic of Indonesia, to please come up to the stage.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I will speak in Indonesia. Yang saya hormati perwakilan kementerian dan lembaga Indonesia, Honorable Mr. Alan Robert, Miss Miu Shan Sheryl, Mr. Alok Mirza, Mr. Hani Al Abdel Kader, Mr. Amam Sukriyato, my friend from BRI, dan juga Bapak Ibu sekalian. Hadirin sekalian yang saya hormati, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera untuk kita semua. Microfinancing untuk usaha mikro dan menengah telah mendorong pertumbuhan ekonomi yang inklusif di Indonesia dan tentu juga di negara-negara selatan lainnya. Ini sangat membantu UMKM mengembangkan bisnis dan memperluas pasar dan juga berkontribusi pada pengurangan ketimpangan ekonomi. Selain memberikan pembiayaan, microfinancing juga memperkuat ekonomi untuk mengadopsi teknologi berkelanjutan. Hal ini meningkatkan ketahanan UMKM terhadap perubahan ekonomi dan lingkungan, sekaligus mendukung pertumbuhan jangka panjang. Hadirin yang saya hormati, Indonesia telah mengadopsi strategi microfinancing untuk meningkatkan akses modal bagi UMKM dan memperkuat kapabilitas dan daya saing di pasar. Pendekatan ini tidak hanya meningkatkan akses ke modal yang seringkali menjadi faktor penghambat utama dari UMKM untuk berkembang. Microfinancing di Indonesia sebagai bagian dari kebijakan nasional yang bertujuan untuk mencapai target inklusi keuangan dengan menaikkan proporsi kredit UMKM menjadi 30% pada tahun 2024. Tapi karena perkembangan ekonomi, hari ini baru mencapai sekitar 20%. Langkah ini diharapkan dapat mendorong pertumbuhan ekonomi dan membuka lebih banyak peluang bagi UMKM untuk berkontribusi dalam pembangunan ekonomi berkelanjutan. Namun UMKM menghadapi hambatan utama dalam mengakses kredit perbankan. Salah satunya adalah kurangnya agunan. Ya, juga perbankan masih menggunakan histori kredit ya bagi UMKM untuk menerima kredit, sehingga banyak UMKM yang belum terhubung ke perbankan menjadi sulit untuk mengakses pembiayaan. Catatan kami seperti dicatat oleh Bank Dunia, masih ada 30,76 juta UMKM yang unbankable. Untuk mencapai target rasio pembiayaan, Kementerian Koperasi dan UKM mengimplementasikan program kredit untuk rakyat dan tengah mempersiapkan juga implementasi ASEAN Micro and Small Enterprises Financing Institution yang juga didukung oleh OECD dalam rangka meningkatkan akses keuangan bagi UMKM di ASEAN. Selain itu, kami juga memperkuat UMKM melalui inovasi penyaluran KUR, kredit usaha untuk rakyat dengan skema rantai pasok serta memfasilitasi pembiayaan sektor produktif koperasi melalui sinergi dengan lembaga pengelola dana bergulir untuk koperasi. Hingga 31 Agustus 2024, penyaluran KUR telah mencapai 195,6 triliun dengan atau sekitar 89,34% yang dialokasikan untuk mikro. Kita juga mengembangkan inovasi KUR cluster dengan menyalurkan sekitar 298,7 miliar atau sekitar 300 usaha mikro di 5 provinsi. Ini masih piloting. Selain KUR, saya ingin juga menyampaikan selain kredit perbankan, pemerintah juga menyalurkan pembiayaan untuk ultra mikro melalui PNM, ya program untuk Mekar dengan outstanding sebesar 44,4 triliun dengan 15 juta penerima. Jadi kalau dibandingkan, ini program Mekar ini sama dengan Grameen Bank, dan artinya ini udah lebih besar daripada nasabah Grameen Bank. Juga UMKM mengakses pembiayaan dari koperasi simpan pinjam. Ada 18 juta orang yang menerima pembiayaan dari kredit dari koperasi simpan pinjam dari sekitar 18.800 koperasi simpan pinjam dengan nilai 600 triliun rupiah. Nah, begitu juga UMKM mendapatkan pembiayaan dari peer-to-peer lending sebanyak 2,7 juta UMKM. Nah, kami juga mendorong inovasi credit scoring tanpa agunan sebagai alternatif penilaian kredit. Jadi selain data kredit history, kita juga sedang mengusulkan penambahan data alternatif, yaitu data telco dan data pembayaran listrik. OJK sudah sedang mempersiapkan infrastruktur untuk diterapkannya credit scoring. Dua hal yang sudah dilakukan oleh OJK. Yang pertama adalah sudah membuka izin baru bagi perusahaan inovasi credit scoring. Yang kedua, SLIC, data historik kredit akan ditambah dengan data fintech, data UMKM penerima fintech, termasuk juga data koperasi simpan pinjam yang nanti sebagian besar akan di bawah pengawasan OJK. Dengan begitu kita harapkan nanti UMKM yang unbankable yang 30,76 juta itu bisa lebih punya opportunity untuk menerima kredit perbankan. Kami juga sedang mengusulkan penghapusan piutang macet UMKM untuk memperlancar juga akses pembiayaan baru. Selain itu, kami sedang memperluas pembiayaan dengan dukungan asuransi penjamin ke industri peer-to-peer lending dan juga securities crowdfunding. Hadirin yang saya hormati, pada kesempatan yang baik ini saya ingin menyampaikan beberapa pesan. Pertama, kita harus terus memperluas akses pembiayaan mikro bagi UMKM, bukan hanya untuk menyediakan modal, tetapi juga untuk membangun kemampuan mereka menghadapi tantangan ekonomi global yang sangat dinamis. Semua pemangku kepentingan perlu bekerja sama agar program seperti kredit usaha rakyat benar-benar bisa semakin banyak menjangkau usaha kecil dan mikro di seluruh negeri. Kedua, inovasi skema pembiayaan sangat penting. Perlu dikembangkan mekanisme lebih fleksibel dan inklusif seperti tadi inovasi credit scoring tanpa agunan, kolaborasi dengan platform peer-to-peer lending. Ketiga, sinergi antara pemerintah, sektor swasta, lembaga keuangan, dan komunitas lokal harus terus diperkuat. Kerjasama ini untuk memastikan inisiatif pembiayaan mikro berdampak dan berkelanjutan dengan peran aktif pemerintah daerah dalam menyelaraskan program pembiayaan dengan kebutuhan lokal. Terakhir, monitoring dan evaluasi secara berkala dengan pemantauan yang efektif dapat segera diidentifikasi tantangan dan penyesuaian strategi yang diperlukan untuk memastikan pencapaian tujuan pembangunan ekonomi yang inklusif dan berkelanjutan. Sebelum itu saya mau sampaikan juga bahwa kami juga mengembangkan pembiayaan untuk pembiayaan untuk agregator yang melalui koperasi, ya, terutama ini untuk menghubungkan small producer seperti di sektor pertanian, peternakan ke industri dan ke market. Dalam prakteknya ada tengkulak, tapi pengepul, tapi dua ini tidak bisa menjadi ekosistem bagi pembiayaan mikro. Nah, sehingga kami mengembangkan agregatornya adalah koperasi dengan pembiayaan yang murah, ya, dengan nilai yang cukup besar. Ya, minimum kami memberikan bantuan kepada agregator itu sekitar 20 miliar. Jadi bukan 500 juta, ya, itu tertinggi pemberian KUR. Itu udah nggak efektif untuk agregator. Dengan begitu nanti kita akan membangun ekosistem pembiayaan yang memungkinkan potensi NPL itu lebih kecil, ya, sehingga bank lebih berani untuk membiayai usaha mikro, terutama di sektor pertanian, peternakan yang potensi NPL-nya sangat tinggi. Kami ada piloting untuk mengerjakan itu. Nah, sekali lagi menutup sambutan ini, saya memberikan apresiasi penyelenggaraan forum tingkat tinggi ini sebagai wadah penting untuk memperkuat kerjasama global dan kemitraan transformatif. Terima kasih kepada semua pihak yang telah menyukseskan acara ini. Semoga diskusi ini berdampak positif bagi pembangunan ekonomi rakyat ke depan. Terima kasih. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Terima kasih Bapak, kami mohon tetap tinggal di tempat untuk foto bersama. We'd like to invite all distinguished speakers and also moderator to please join on the stage for a group photo together. Thank you. Baik. Okay. Excellencies, yes. Everybody please look at the camera. On my count, please. 3, 2, 1. Smile. One more time. 3, 2, 1. Okay, thank you, thank you, thank you. You may return calmly to your seat. Thank you once again to the Ministry, His Excellency Mr. Teten Masduki, for the keynote speech and your time. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, moving on to the main agenda of this fourth parallel thematic session on empowering micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises, strengthening microfinancing for inclusive and impactful development. We will start the panel moderated discussion, and now let us welcome on the stage to our moderator for this panel, Mr. Arya Widianto, Chief of Risk and Sustainability Officer from Amarta Microfinance Indonesia. Please come up to the stage. Give your please warm welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to our moderator for the last session this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Mbak Putu Desi. Very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is also an honor for me to welcome His Excellency Mr. Teten Masduki, the Minister of cooperatives and MSMEs of Indonesia. We have here the esteemed representatives from governments, executives from private sectors, academia, NGOs, and members of the academic communities. So welcome to Bali, and thank you for staying with us for the last panel sessions of today. So this particular sessions on the empowering MSMEs, strengthening microfinancing for the inclusive and impactful developments is a testament to our shared commitment to fostering the economic development of the micro, small, and medium enterprises across the globe. As we gather to discuss the critical roles of MSMEs in driving sustainable growth and achieving development goals, we are honored that a diverse expertise from senior leaderships are here in this room. So I'm glad to invite my distinguished panelists to the stage. I'll start with my first panelist, Mr. Alok Misra. Alok Misra is the CEO and Director of the Microfinance Institution Network, MFIN. Welcome to this panel. Thank you. And my second speaker will be my friend from the Philippines, Mr. Alan Robert Sikat. He's the Executive Director of the Microfinance Council of the Philippines Incorporated. Welcome to Bali, Alan. And my third speaker is Ms. Cheryl Low. She's the Senior Project Manager of the International Advisory Services of the Frankfurt School. Welcome to the stage, Cheryl. My fourth speaker is from here. He's an Indonesian. Selamat datang kepada Bapak Amam Sukrianto. He's the Director of Commercial, Small and Medium Businesses at PT Bank Rakyat Indonesia Persero. Welcome, selamat datang Pak. Last but not least, my fifth speaker will be Mr. Hani Abdelkader El Sadani. He's the head of MCO and the country director of the International Fund for Agricultural Developments, or IFAD. Thank you so much for joining this panel. So, as a background context of why we are here together this afternoon, MSMEs are the global economic backbones. That's the fact that we learned from today's discussions and also from yesterday's panels. Especially in the developing nations, the MSMEs constitute over 90% of all firms globally and very crucial for the economic developments, especially in the developing countries, the landlocked developing countries, and small island developing states. They're also pivotal in achieving the sustainable development goals. So there are some overarching relationship between the MSMEs, the SDGs, and also the inclusive finance. However, as we know it, MSMEs face multiple challenges. So limited access to formal financing, such as from loans from the banks, has significantly hampers the growth of MSMEs in developing nations. The global financing gap for MSMEs is estimated at 5.2 trillion annually. That's a huge amount of money, including here in Indonesia. So there are also geographical disparity in financing. Indonesia faces geographical challenges as well, as we are archipelago nation. It's very difficult to reach out to those in remote islands. And roughly 80-90% of the unmet demand for credit happens across the globe, including Latin America, the Caribbean, and the Middle East. This is what I like. Despite all the challenges, microfinancing for the MSMEs is emerging as a powerful tool for unlocking the potential of marginalized groups, especially those living in rural and underserved areas. So to address these challenges, multidisciplinary collaborations in the area of access to finance, regulatory frameworks, and technical capacities are essential to harnessing the potential of these MSMEs in the global economy. So here with us today, we have expert distinguished panelists who will speak about those spectrums in more depth. And of course, we will invite you, all the audience, to participate in discussions as well later on. I'll give my first microphone sessions to Alan, Mr. Alan So what are the best practices and the lesson learned that you'd like to share from operating a microfinancing institutions in the Philippines? Alan.
Thank you, Arya. So there are several microfinance models available to MSMEs. One of the most successful models, particularly for micro enterprises, is of course the Grameen approach developed by Nobel Peace Prize winner Professor Muhammad Yunus of Bangladesh. So let me see a show of hands. How many of you or who among you are familiar with Professor Yunus and the Grameen Bank approach? Can you raise your hand? All right, around 10 to 20% of the participants. So this model uses an approach where groups of women are provided with microcredit while liability is jointly shared among members of the group. Another successful financing model is a methodology also from Bangladesh known as ASA, where groups of women are provided with loans, but joint liability is no longer required. So in the Philippines, several microfinance institutions have combined these two methodologies and have implemented such models depending on the preference and needs of their clients. But what remains prevalent is the high touch or human touch approach, where there is still an opportunity for clients to meet weekly or monthly and attend center meetings. So generally, these microfinance models are characterized by the provision of a broad range of financial services such as credit, savings, insurance, or even remittance with simplified loan procedures, and these loans are generally non-collateralized and with short-term loan repayment schemes. But there are several limitations of these current models, particularly the loan amount. No? Since these loans are non-collateralized, MFIs, we call it MFIs, the microfinance institutions, are generally hesitant to provide loan amounts that are high because they want to lessen the risk of non-repayment. Therefore, clients tend to borrow from multiple lenders, creating high risk of over-indebtedness. Then another limitation is the rate of interest, which are higher compared to commercial banks. The microfinance methodology is known to have high operational costs. Therefore, to cover this, higher interest rates are charged. So microfinance can be tailored to the specific needs of MSMEs by incorporating a wide variety of financial services beyond credit. I mentioned earlier about savings and insurance. Insurance may include both life insurance and non-life, like health insurance or property insurance or even pension. And these are critical components of microfinance that address the vulnerabilities of poor and low-income households, including MSMEs. In addition, there should also be efforts to broaden credit products, including introduction of financial services addressing the life cycle of small business owners or MSMEs. This includes the adoption of housing microfinance, for example, for incremental housing improvement, access to water and sanitation, or incorporating the microfinance methodology to agricultural businesses or micro-agri. So let me stop there because I will give the opportunity for our other speakers to speak.
Thank you, Alan. I have a follow-up question for that. You mentioned that Grameen model is part of the opportunity to promote, like financial inclusions, especially for the MSMEs. I noticed that the fintech is also growing in the Philippines. And how do you see the opportunity of the financial technology or technology-enabled microfinance to foster the growth of MSMEs?
Yes, that's actually a very good question, Arya. But let me respond by speaking about the importance of technology and its crucial role in strengthening microfinance and empowering MSMEs. So specifically on the microfinance institution level, there are different stages in our microfinance institutions' digital transformation. While some have embarked on improving their core banking systems through cloud technologies, other institutions have developed app-based solutions for loan collections and releases and embark on digitizing their internal processes such as internal audit and loan origination systems. So this is where the opportunity is in terms of either developing your own mobile mobile apps or partnership with fintechs. No? On the MSME level, technology and use of digital solutions have demonstrated benefits to MSMEs. Benefits include cost savings through use of digital apps and e-wallets like OVO, Dana, or GoPay here in Indonesia. Of course, benefits include convenience of use, increase in income through expansion of markets, through Facebook Marketplace, for example, or even Instagram or even TikTok for the younger generations, and increase in safety due to lesser cash handling. And it is also important to note, Arya, that according to the Asian Business Review, Southeast Asia, our region, is experiencing a wave of digitization. The region, our ASEAN region, added 400 million new internet users in the first year of the global pandemic, and 70% of the ASEAN population is now online. The COVID-19 pandemic also triggered a broad expansion of e-commerce and demand for transfers and contactless payments that has not faded even after the pandemic. So this presents a huge opportunity for microfinance institutions, banks, and fintechs in incorporating digital technologies in their operations, particularly in countries like Indonesia and the Philippines that have dispersed and remote populations because of our thousands of islands similar to Indonesia and the Philippines, that where digital finance will be particularly transformational. By merging traditional microfinance models and emerging technologies, MFIs, banks, and fintechs will be at the forefront of digital financial inclusion, which will also help develop and empower MSMEs.
Great to know that there is an alignment between the technology developments and also the promotions of financial inclusion. Thank you, Alan. So I'll move to the next speaker. I'll go to Mr. Alok Misra. Alok, as an industry association or the ASERO who work closely with the government, from your point of view, what are the government's role in supporting the microfinance enabling environment?
Thanks, and good afternoon to everybody. Thanks, Bappenas and Government of Indonesia for having us here. Thank you very much. When we talk about, before I come to government, let me say a few things about microfinance. I think Alan has talked about methodology. When we talk about microfinance and MSME, I am expanding SME into MSME, micro, small and medium enterprises. We have to see that what does the term mean, how it is defined in various countries, and what does microfinance mean in various contexts. For example, in majority of South Asian countries or even East Asian countries, microfinance, as Alan was saying, because it is non-collateralized, the amount of loan given is also small. For example, in India, it can go to maybe $1,200 maximum. So that's not typically enterprise financing, I would say. It's, I call it not even MSME, I call it nano enterprise financing. It's not even micro and small enterprise. But it depends, again, the context depends on countries. For example, in the morning, I was reading that in Ireland, yesterday the government has revised the limit of loan which a microfinance institution can give from $25,000 to $50,000. Now, so that's a different context. So we have to be cognizant of it, because if we remain true to the spirit of microfinance, which is two things. One is no physical collateral. It has to be non-collateralized. And second is group culture. It has to be, the amount will remain small, because as a risk mitigation measure, like it is in South Asian countries, even in Indonesia. But then, the problem is what we call is really in the SME sector, which is what we in development literature we call as lost middle, because banks will typically in India take up loans beyond say $7,500, microfinance $1,500 maximum. So the gap between 1,500 to 7,000, that is what is the lost middle. Now, how do we tackle that? Because, and the problem there, in India, now I come back to your question about when you talked about the role of government. I would say to the government, I will come later, but first I will talk about the policy architecture, how it is designed. So there is a gradation of financial institutions. For example, microfinance institutions, NBFC, non-bank financial companies, MFI, they will be in that zone, $1,000, $1,500. After that, there is an intermediary structure between banks and NBFC MFI called as small finance banks. They are supposed to be typically be lending in that space of MSME, that is $2,000 to $5,000, $6,000. And then there are banks which will take up from $6,000 onwards. So there is a gradation mechanism. But still then, all the policy institutions, the architecture, everything is there. But still there are things lacking, because in India, there are, as per the last count, 65 million MSMEs. 65 million is a huge number, out of which 63.5, or you can say 98%, are either nano or micro. SME part is very small. So the amount, still there is a lot of things to be done, lot of credit gap, as Minister was telling earlier, there is a gap. Now, when I look across all the South Asian countries, there is this gap persists. Now, how do we, and when I look at various countries, including India, where everything is there, institutions are there, but why it is not happening? So we have to, I think, discuss more on that. And in my mind, there are two things. One, I am not a big supporter of government directly entering into the markets. Government should continue to play a facilitative role, a sound regulatory and legal infrastructure to be there. Two things it can do from the government side, which will facilitate, and that is why the lenders generally shy away from lending to MSMEs, because they don't have, Minister was telling, it is common problem. They don't have formal records. They don't have a neat and clean balance sheet and profit and loss account, which generally the bankers would love to have. So assessing them takes time. You have to go there, triangulate data and all that. And then the question of defaults, because banks do not have, banks want collateral as well as clean statements. So both are lacking in that segment. So in that process, the governments have a twin role. One is that the government should have a suitable, in India it is started now, is there, that is credit guarantee scheme, where the government guarantees a part of the loan which you give to the MSMEs, so that not the full loan, but just part of it as a guarantee, because that makes the banker a little comfortable. In case the loan goes bad, there is somebody who is watching my back. So that, but in that there are various nuances. Time comes, I can explain that, because often guarantee schemes lent into moral hazard. Because then if I have a backstopping guarantee of full amount, I can go reckless in lending. So that has to be properly balanced. And second thing is, which again in India has started, is that most of these nano and micro enterprises, they don't have a legal identity. They are mostly unincorporated entities. So now, based on identifier number and simplified fact sheet, a digital number system has been started in India, which is called as Udyam number. Udyam in our language means industrial number. Udyam means your enterprise, you can say. So enterprise number will be given, and then you will have an identity like normal corporate entities do have. And that will, once that data is there, once you have a legal entity, you have a PAN card or taxation card and everything, then the bankers will become more comfortable. Your credit history, which again Minister was saying, that can also be properly recorded and deduped. And technology, yes, in MSME lending can do a lot of part. For example, they can pull up, like we have now digital lending platform set up again by the apex lender of small industries in India, SIDBI. This is got a platform which pulls in data from your tax returns, from your bank statements, and various other sources, and gives you some sort of a credit score. Because all your money comes in, receivables come in your bank account, your tax returns, then your GST returns, goods and service tax returns, all that comes into it, and based on that, it's a marketplace. And once your score is there, that Alok Mishra wants as an enterprise this loan, it has gone through this platform's check, and this score is there, and then all the banks and financial institutions are onboarded onto that platform, and then everybody can say, I am ready to give a loan of $5,000 at this rate, and the person can choose. So that has also started. So that is one more step which the government can do.
Right. So public data aggregations, like you mentioned, is part of the success in promoting, better access of finance to MSMEs.
Yes.
Do you think that those kind of approach facilitated by the government should be also replicated elsewhere in other markets like Indonesia perhaps or Philippines?
Yeah, I think absolutely, because these are the common lessons. I say, see, there can be different countries coming from Philippines to India or Pakistan or Afghanistan, but the context more or less remains the same. The economic landscape remains the same, where 90% of enterprises will be nano or micro, 5 to 7% will be micro, medium and small, and 1% or less than 1% will be large, the Unilevers of the world. So that has, the context remains the same. And that is why there's the beauty that we all have such common problems, but still we fail to learn from each other. I think that's what the forum is trying to do, and should be done. Yeah.
Yes, and also that resonates what the minister also mentioned about utilizing alternative credit scoring by, using public data and then make it some insights so that we could better serve those previously unbanked or unseen by the conventional banking, credit scoring methodology. Thank you, Alok. I'll come back to you later. My next speaker will be Pak Amam. Pak Amam, Bank BRI has been around for 128 years, ya Pak ya, since 1895. That's amazing. I would say maybe Bank BRI is the oldest startup in Indonesia. It's been around for hundreds of years. And you're focusing on microfinancing services, especially for the rural communities. While we know that there are many of our families and colleagues are still living in poverty, how do you see that the effectiveness of microfinancing access in helping alleviate poverty in Indonesia?
Thanks, Paria. Good morning, all speakers, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you again for the opportunity to represent Bank Rakyat Indonesia in these high-level forums on multi-stakeholders partnerships. Today, I think I'd like to share how BRI successfully accelerate the growth of MSME in Indonesia. Let me start with the fact that most of the global economy, global South economy, including Indonesia, are still struggling in its effort to increase the number of financial literacy, right? And as you mentioned earlier, on the other hand, most countries' economic growth also contributed by MSME. So that's the fact that we have in the global South. In Indonesia itself, previously mentioned by the minister that MSME plays a very significant role. According to the data from the Ministry of Patet and Masduki of Cooperatives and SME, the number of SME in Indonesia, I think similar to what Alan mentions, is 99% of the whole business in Indonesia. So it's not 92 or 95, but it's 99%, Alan, in Indonesia. But interestingly, it absorbed around 97% of the workforce in Indonesia. And it's contribute to about 62% of national GDP. So that's interesting, and it's a huge amount. So that's why we have to handle this matter accordingly, of course. And unfortunately, according to 2023 data, 9 million of 52 million ultra micro businesses still do not have access to financial institution. However, this number already decreased from 18 million of 45 million unserved populations back in 2019. So already 9 million decrease. But before the formations of ultra micro holdings, while the other 44 millions are either have access to bank or formal institutions like group lending, pound lending, fintech, and also rural banks. In September 2021, it's a very historical moment in Indonesia where ultra micro holding is formed. Ultra micro holding is formed. It's involved 3 state-owned entities. Bank Rakyat Indonesia is the biggest bank in Indonesia, focusing on MSME, and BRI act as the holding company, while the other entities, Pegadaian, the biggest pawn shop in the world probably, and also PNM, the Government Empowerment Agency, the biggest group lending provider. This holding then decided that ultra micro segment is made as the new source of sustainable growth for the holding and for the BRI group as well. So it's now our source of growth for the future. How we do that? We combine. We're not just giving access to working capital for those businesses, but we also provide them with empowerment program. So within Bank Rakyat Indonesia, ultra micro and micro segments can take up loan as small as 3 million rupiahs, or equivalent $180 probably, to 500 million rupiahs, which is around $30,000 right now. And ultra micro holding was formed during pandemic, and the era where digitalization is getting more and more important. However, before we decided the business model that is suitable to assess that market, then we underwent research and survey back in 2020. And the result of the research is that there are 7 main characteristics of MSME, as mentioned here on the slide. And from that research, we found out that even though the adoption rate of technology is high in micro business sectors, even though it's high, they still need locally embedded financial institutions. And they still prefer doing banking via agent rather than digital banking model. So to respond to that finding, then BRI adopted the concept of hybrid bank. So instead of going to digital, no, we just combined both digital and physical presence. Because we already have enormous physical presence, then we try to optimize that. But at the same time, so we also try to continuously build our digital capability. So with this concept, then BRI improve the business processes, business model innovations can be made easily, and managing networks that combining digitalization, networking, and financial advisory services. And we now have around 7,700 outlets all over Indonesia, and more than 700,000 e-channels, and interestingly, nearly 1 million third-party agents, we call it billing agents, and 44,000 experienced financial advisors throughout Indonesia. So with that, then BRI can successfully deliver the ultra micro holding aspiration. So I think well planning, excellent executions, continuous monitoring, evaluations, and improvements are the key for the success.
It's very interesting to understand the approach that you're using, like combinations of digital and also the physical presence, so kind of like hybrid approach. And it's also resonates what Alok mentioned earlier, that the approach should be contextual, depending on the challenges that the market is operating. My follow-up question, Pak Amam, given that there's always discussions where we expect our MSMEs to scale up or to go to the next level. Based on your observations, what are the definitions of success for our MSMEs, and how do you recommend, like what are the recipe for them to be able to scale up themselves?
Great, good questions, Arya. I think the definitions of success for MSME is that when they are successfully uplifted to the next level. I mean, even in BRI, we have a kind of financing framework, while at the end, we consider we are successful when we success by sending them to be one of the global players. I mean, medium business, but they are exporters. They can access to global market. So I think that's interesting because in BRI now we have the financing framework which is can address all level of entrepreneurships. So we understand that each MSME are at different stage of development, and we offer tailored financial solutions to meet their specific needs. So BRI not only as a bank, but as a group of companies, provides the empowerment platform and various credit schemes that are adjusted to the business level and business development of each MSMEs. Metrics of bankability and feasibility of the customer business will determine what credit schemes which is suitable for them, and entrepreneurial levels of each business will also determine the type of empowerment programs to be provided to them. Like, for example, in terms of bankability and feasibility, for unfeasible and unbankable business, we have products like direct cash assistance. We have products like soft loans through partnership lending, and we have product group lending through Makar loan. And for unfeasible and bankable business, I think Pegadaian, the member of Ultra Makar Holdings, plays a big role there through its bond lending. And the third one, for feasible but unbankable business, thanks again to the government of Indonesia through its coordinating manager of economic affairs, by introducing interest subsidized loan, which is called KUR, earlier mentioned by the minister.
Yeah.
Right, and it's similar, supporting to what Alan mentioned earlier about the support of the government. So that's the third point. And then the fourth, for feasible and bankable business, of course, they have to go to fully commercial loans, either it is in micro loan, small or medium commercial loans. And each level of entrepreneurships, as I mentioned earlier, requires different literacy program as well. So BRI divides here the form of literacy into 3 categories as well. First, basic literacy. Basic literacy is mainly for beginners who just start their business. We provide this financial inclusion empowerment program, introducing them how to know about banking products and services and basic financial management, like simple accounting, for example, just to help them to understand how their business perform economically. And step up to the next ones, when the business in a growing phase, we give them business literacy. It already involves like managerial capacity, building, compliance, innovation culture, industry and market understanding, leadership, long-term mindset, and also business scale. And the third one, digital literacy. It's, we provide this for the growth in terms of product enhancement and reach out. So we guide those businesses to go modern, go digital, go online, and even go global. We deliver those empowerment program through our day-to-day assistance done by our professional financial advisor, which we have now around 44,000,
Wow.
covering all over Indonesia. And we also do in-class programs done by experts. So we invite experts, and so those MSMEs come to the class, and so we teach them some knowledge about how to run or how to enhance their business. And the third one, we also have Rumah BUMN in Indonesia. We call it SOE Empowerment Hub, which is available in more than 250 places all over Indonesia. And most importantly, through our digital empowerment platform.
Yeah.
Right? We call it Link UMKM.
Okay.
Yeah, where entrepreneurs can make self-assessment to get to know what level of entrepreneurial that they have now. With that, then there'll be alternative. We provide them with alternatives of what empowerment programs that available for them, and then they kind of choose by themselves which one will be beneficial for themselves.
Right.
So,
yeah.
we believe that by supporting these businesses, we are not only contributing to their success, but also securing the growth engine for BRI Group, and most importantly, it's also contributing to the broader economic development of Indonesia.
Very extensive intervention. Thank you, Pak Amam, for sharing. I'll go to the next panelist, Mr. Hani El Sadani. So part of the IFAD's role is to invest in rural people and help empower them to increase their income. Would you be able to elaborate on what are the IFAD contributions to promoting financial inclusion and access to finance, especially for the smallholder farmers and the rural ecosystems?
Okay, thank you, Pa. First of all, I don't come from the banking sector. I come from general development, and so I'll take a different perspective here. IFAD, let me first talk a little bit about where I come from. IFAD is International Fund for Agricultural Development, is an international finance institution and also a specialized agency of the United Nations. IFAD is focusing on the rural poor, including the smallholder farmers. We try, or what IFAD tries to do, is to reduce rural poverty through increasing incomes for the smallholders and the rural poor in general, moving them out of poverty, improving food and nutrition security. One way also is to create as much entrepreneurs as possible, creating new micro and small medium enterprises, strengthening existing one. These are, some of the ways we try to alleviate the rural poverty and support the rural poor. Another area also, of course, is improving natural resources management, building, addressing climate change impacts, both adaptation and mitigation. Access to finance in general and microfinance in particular is a very important tool that IFAD implements in order to achieve the above goals for the people living in rural areas, including the smallholder farmers, and obviously also micro and small medium enterprises, whether, as I said, existing that we try to strengthen or new ones that we try to create. If you please move to the next slide. Here I was trying to delineate some of the microfinance models, but I guess My colleagues mentioned that before, so I'm not going to talk about that here. So please move to the next one as well. Okay. What is EFAD approach to microfinance? EFAD try to synthesize, in general, you know, if you go to an EFAD project that is having a microfinance component, then what we try to do is usually to synthesize communities building on existing leadership in the communities and also the existing social structure. In many cases, we try to form or start from forming credit and savings groups where needed and where possible. In doing so, of course, financial literacy is a very important tool where we do a lot of trainings to the communities to teach them about how to manage their own financial affairs, how to run their household and their, you know, farms as a business. So farming as a business is one of the things actually we do, which includes as well, you know, in financial literacy. We use group collateral approach where possible, okay, in order to help them gain access to finance. And, you know, and as I said, you know, help them just as individuals or as enterprises. In many cases as well, okay, depending on where we are, what part of the world we are, it's very essential to provide TA to microfinancial institutions and even to regular banks in order to be, you know, willing to deal with smallholder farmers in rural areas. This is very important because they are being perceived as risky groups that you don't want to lend to. Portfolio at risk, you know, in most of the cases become a problem. So you want to deal with these banks and microfinancial institutions to let them know that there is a way to deal with this kind of context, okay? And actually, you know, you help them build products that cater to farmers, cater to rural areas, okay? Develop, you know, different, you know, loan products, which, for example, good for production, good for livelihood, and so on. There are different ways, and even in some cases, you develop, you know, products which are suitable for certain type of crops. So for this crop, there is one model. For that crop, there is another model. For processing, there is one model. For, you know, value addition, another model, and so on. And of course, I'm not talking here even about the Islamic finance products, which is another area that requires as well certain type of capacity building. Policy dialogue, of course, with the regulatory bodies like the central banks, helping them to build regulations for microfinance institutions is something else, also something that also we do whenever the context requires that. Next slide, please. Here, I'm not going to talk in detail about that, but these are some of the cases where microfinance and financial inclusion played very important role in projects that I'm aware of. Certainly, EFAD has much, much more than this. For example, in Sudan, a country that I have worked in a few years ago, microfinance was really a very important tool that we employed in order to address rural poverty. One of these models that we used was what we called it ABSUMI. It was the Agricultural Bank of Sudan, and it was a microfinance initiative. Bank of Sudan didn't have any microfinance initiatives until that point of time. This initiative was, you know, introduced in, in Western Sudan, a very dry and poverty is widespread. Women are on the margin. That particular model was addressing women only. We started there from forming credit and saving groups, and then later on they were directed to open bank accounts in the Agricultural Bank of Sudan. Credit officers were traveling all the way to these communities which are very far. The project that we had here supported the Agricultural Bank of Sudan actually establish microfinance branches close to the communities, and credit officers were driving using vehicles that was provided by the project. So actually there we start from scratch. There was no microfinance institutions or banking services existing in that area. And actually, this model has had profound impact on poverty alleviation and actually empowering women. And just to let you know, there was an almost 100% repayment rate. The portfolio at risk was very, very low. And big part of that actually, I mean, we were joking about it then, a big part of that is that we were focusing on women groups, okay? And there in Sudan, and I think across IFAD, by the way, not only in Sudan, it is very well known, if you want to have, you know, this kind of activity succeeding, you have to have the majority as women. Somehow, when you have it more men, it doesn't work as well. But that particular case and then others, that was the result. If you can please move to the next slide. Well, a similar thing that was also in the case of Nigeria. There we were focusing, the project was focusing on climate change adaptation and also agribusiness support. Also microfinance was a big part of the project activities. Please move to the next slide. In Kenya, we had a project which was focusing on reform of the finance, on financial inclusion. It was with the Ministry of Finance, not with the Ministry of Agriculture. Usually, Ministry of Agriculture is the typical client for IFAD. But in that case, we were working with the Ministry of Finance. Another fantastic project. It dealt with different products for financial inclusion. One of them was microfinance, working with microfinance institutions, including those, which were focusing on women only, and others as well. We worked with them to, what the project did was to capitalize them, supported them through technical assistance to build models, provided training to the credit officers and to the banks and also to the beneficiaries. A credit risk sharing facility was created, not for the microfinance particularly, but for the general financial inclusion activities. One element, I mean, there where microfinance or regular, access to finance didn't work was when we were dealing with the ultra poor. Okay, there were communities where poverty were very, very deep, and like working with the communities at that level wasn't possible. So the project started from cash transfer. Okay, working with Ministry of Social Affairs there to transfer, make 2 payments at least in order to take these beneficiaries out of the status they were in. Was supposed, next phase was supposed, of course, through other projects, was supposed to be, dealing with the financial inclusion aspects. But microfinance certainly was not suitable for this particular case. Next slide, please. Now I move to some of the examples here in Indonesia. So IFAD portfolio in Indonesia currently has a number of projects which has microfinance components. One of them is the development of integrated farming system in upland area, a project co-financed by IFAD and the Islamic Development Bank. One particular component is dealing with creating a microfinance facility in the regional banks through capitalizing them. Activities of the project is still in the initial phases. One particular difficulty that the project is facing is the need to modify some of the bylaws and regulations at the district level, which requires approval by the district assembly. But the project design recognizes access to finance and microfinance as a very important exit strategy in order to sustain project achievements. Next slide, please. This one is the Youth Entrepreneurship and Employment Support Services Program. Yes, it's a project aims at keeping rural youth in the rural areas, reduce the potential of their migration into the cities, and this is done through bringing them into the agricultural sector again. One big aspect here is financial literacy, access to finance, whether it is through loans from the banks or grants from the project to them in order to start businesses. But access to finance is a very important element of sustaining the gains and ensuring that those youth actually become entrepreneurs. Many enterprises are being created here. I can go on and on talking about that, but these are some of the examples I could bring in today. Next slide, please. What are the lessons learned from some of the IFAD interventions worldwide? Microfinance is effective in achieving financial inclusion for high-risk clients, smallholder farmers without collateral in remote areas where conventional financial products is not always adequate. Microfinance serves as an excellent tool to empower women through female farmer groups. A comprehensive support package is crucial, which includes capacity building for beneficiaries and also enhancing the capacity of the financial institutions. The TOR that we received asked that for some of the limitations. Okay, frankly speaking, my experience with microfinance has been great. Okay, but what I'm going to list here is just generic stuff, which like the the interest rate is high and all this kind of things. But for me, I didn't see them as imperative at all, to be honest with you. Of course, what I can say here, that's my experience, is that it's more suitable for the economically active. When you go to the non-economically active, it doesn't work really. You have to find somebody else. I stop here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Hani, for elaborating. I'll move to the next speaker, last but not least, Cheryl. Cheryl, what are the initiatives that you see coming from the governments, DFIs, probably international organizations in supporting microfinance enabling environment?
Thank you for the question, Arya. So maybe just to take a step back to introduce Frankfurt School. We are a German business school, and we've been working in the development finance space for the last 30 years, and also doing capacity building for microfinance institutions globally, and together with development finance institutions like the Art of your Asian Development Bank, European Investment Bank, UNDP, etc., in Latin America, in Europe, in Africa, and also countries in Asia. So there were regional programs and country-level programs. So I guess at this stage of the conversation, I would take a few steps back and maybe we can zoom out and look a bit at some of the global trends relating to the microfinance sector. And I think something that is coming up, not yet, but on the horizon, is definitely the topic of sustainability and ESG. So if we look at it, the effects of climate change, I'm sure even the MSMEs that we work with experience it, right? I mean, in the agricultural sector, the farmers. However, some of them, one way to think about it is that, oh yeah, I might feel quite powerless. What can I do? How can I contribute to adapt or to the effects of climate change, or how can I mitigate these problems? So if we take a few steps back and look from the view of how the donors or the development finance institutions think about it, they see that the financial sector actually plays a very important role to help the real economy with the transition, right? So it is all parts of the financial sector. So it has started now a lot globally in the banking sector. So we have like the sustainability regulation, ESG reporting from the banks, and also the taxonomy, right, to guide what are some of the eligible so-called green or sustainable activities that can be financed. But I think surely some spots now in some areas already globally in the microfinance space, microfinance institutions start to see their role beyond, also in this space. They want to see that they can contribute as a sector itself to the environment. And in fact, if we look at it, microfinance institutions, they are already supporting MSMEs that did not have access to finance. So it's a form of social inclusion. We are including communities, migrants, youth that otherwise would not have gotten the finance. And in fact, if we look at it from another perspective, microfinance institutions are really supporting this S in ESG, the social part. And this is also making banks think of microfinance institutions in a different way as well. So from a financing perspective, and also governments or even the development finance institutions, they can think of providing guarantees to MFIs, and it also supports their own ESG work, which is about environmental, social, and governance. So the social component of microfinance institutions is one engine that is pushing this forward. The other part is that microfinance institutions are operating, with their clients in the rural parts, which also experience the effects of climate change. And it is time that some of them are also starting to look at how this climate risk impact their own portfolio. Right? This is a bit of this double materiality approach, where we look from the outside in, what kind of climate risk is happening and how does it affect my loan portfolio in different parts of the country, from floods to that can cause also agricultural risks, etc. And also the inside-out approach. So MFIs look at themselves and say, how does my operations affect the environment? What am I doing for the environment? What am I doing to include more communities to get access to financing? So this trend is starting to pop up, I think, coming out more. And what could come out of that would be probably, there would be the chance of green microfinance loan products also for smallholder farmers, because there are water-saving technologies. For example, sprinkler irrigation or drip irrigation is better than the ones with the tubes. So they are actually what smallholder farmers can already invest in. They can choose the more environmentally friendly option, and it's not necessarily always more expensive. It has to do with creating the market for these technologies. We need to have the suppliers of these technologies in the market. Maybe the first few, they will be priced high, but as soon as the market opens and the environmental topic, and the government also supports and enables that, these markets are expected to open up. So this is one point on sustainability that I also wanted to share with the group today. And then the other part is on non-financial services, right? A lot of us all shared about all the type of non-financial work that goes with microcredit provision, very critical. And we also ask ourselves, how can we help the MSMEs get to the next level? Yeah, so this is also, I think, a common question that we see in also all the projects. One challenge that has always happened is that it can be it's quite hard. Some jurisdictions or countries do not have the chance to build this ecosystem for non-financial services because it is linked to maybe a short-term project or it's linked to a loan, and then after it ends, the support also stops. But in fact, the MSME needs some form of continuous support. And also some youth startups, they also need some mentoring, some form of networking amongst themselves, and it is something that is continuous. However, in many countries, also even in Europe as well, that they cannot get reliable partners, the NGOs, to do this on a long-term basis. So then the question is maybe relevant for the government. Can the governments maybe play a role in setting up something like a one-stop shop? If I'm a MSME today and I want to set up a business, can I also get some form of non-financial services training from other sources and building already on maybe programs that are very relevant in Indonesia, like the People's Credit or the CORE program? Yeah, and then the other point, because of Frankfurt School, we did a project with the PT Post Indonesia 2 years ago, even though during the pandemic, because microfinance is such a personal interaction. There's a lot of digital potential, but in the end, you get the loan because you take the loan because you trust the person that you're talking to, and this trust to be built it has to be built via both. Maybe there's a digital part, but also this in-person interactions. So with Post Indonesia, the work was about trying to use existing networks. So because they already have a network of 20,000 employees, what can they do to understand the clients they are serving at the moment? So the experts that we hired also supported them in developing better client segmentation of the areas or the villages that they work with. What kind of financial needs do they have? And did some financial literacy training also for the post officers, so that maybe this knowledge can come back also to the microfinance institutions or banks that are already in the area. So somehow this combination of physical and also digital approach might be a nice one to consider as well. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Cheryl. I have a follow-up question. You mentioned about climate related. So Indonesian governments are putting more emphasis on the food security these days as their midterm and long-term goals. Do you see that climate change is also becomes the threat for the the vulnerabilities of our rural communities, which also threat their future incomes and prosperities in the future? And if so, how's your approach to mitigate the risk of such circumstances?
Thank you for the question. So definitely the answer is yes. The food security is a function. I mean, to secure that is also the livelihood of the farmers, the smallholder farmers. But I think it is operating in a very fragile ecosystem, right, of the biodiversity as well. So I was also reading that Indonesia, in fact, is one of the top 17, the world's 17 mega diverse ecosystems in the world, with 17% of the world's mammals and this flora and fauna. And in fact, the good agricultural produce is a function of the care that has been extended so far by the agricultural community to ensure that the ecosystem, there's a balance for the flora and fauna and for soil and everything. So these efforts have to continue. And I think there is more recognition, at least from the global stage, like with the Global Biodiversity Directive, that funds will go into these areas. So if smallholders and agricultural sector, I mean, they take care of their environment, these are, even maybe it doesn't sound very relevant today, but just maintaining the number of species of a certain fish or something within the agricultural fishery is important, and it can be recognized, and you can even get support for that, because this is a kind of like a global effort, and climate funds are going to the areas like to Indonesia, where there are peatlands, where there's a high level of biodiversity, and in ensuring that you can also then perhaps then link to this part on agricultural food chains as well. So I guess my message is to say that this is getting more and more attention from the development finance institutions who could channel funds in this area, and also there are a lot of business models evolving, like eDNA kits, just very simple to use kits now being developed to understand how is the quality of your water, and things like that can maybe help the farmers get some quick understanding of the data, how to understand it with the different colors. This is going to be a problem for me. What can I do to mitigate the risk? So some of this education work will have to come in maybe when the market's open, or also just by more sharing and conferences and sharing like that will also help, I think.
Right. Thank you. So now I'd like to open the floor for any questions or comments that you have. Probably we have one or two questions. Yes, I'll take the first question from. Please state your name, where you're from, and to whom that your question being addressed to.
Thank you so much. My name is Reza from Jakarta, Indonesia. I address the question to IFAD, Mr. Hani. It is very interested that you have some models, if I might say, projects in Indonesia. Right now, we, in the sense of my institution, we are dealing with coffee growers, coffee farmers, and do you have any project that related with the climate resilience? Because right now, as the smallholders, they are the one actually suffer in the sense of the effect. Right now in Kintamani, more than 6,000 farmers affected by the climate change. Now we are under the cooperative trading basis. We are helping with the capacity building, etc., etc. My point is, do you have any related project with the capacity building on green and climate resilience? Thank you.
Hani,
Sure.
please.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your question. Actually, climate building capacity to adapt to climate change or climate resilience is always part of our design, is mainstreamed in our activities. Sometimes we have dedicated projects for that, okay, that also try to mobilize climate finance and so on. But in general, climate resilience is something we try to address all through. Even for example, for the youth entrepreneurship program, which I mentioned, there is specific activities for that. Some of the projects, their activities in nature try to help the farmers, and producers and cooperatives, deal with its impacts. For example, the Upland project, the dry farming project, that tries to develop irrigation in highlands, okay, where you have access, where you can do only one crop a year, okay, during the rainy season. Outside of the rainy season, you don't have access to water. The project, builds irrigation systems, small-scale irrigation systems, which, gives the farmers opportunity to cultivate another season. Well, microfinance is part of the package, okay, which will help them to sustain their activities after the project finishes. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I hope. Is that answer questions, Pak Reza? Okay.
With
Sure,
pleasure,
sure,
with pleasure,
definitely.
sir. With pleasure.
Any more questions from the audience? Okay, well, we still have some time. Maybe to wrap up these sessions, because we're running late, 1 or 2 minutes from each panelist. Since we are talking about multi-stakeholders partnership, so how can we better collaborate as your closing statement? Maybe started from Mr. Alok. How can we better collaborate?
You mean collaboration between countries or between
Anything,
government, private?
countries, multi-stakeholders, government, private sectors.
Okay. I think, as I said in my introductory thing, within the country, there are 3 aspects, separate aspects for each stakeholder to take care of. For example, the government to have a sound regulatory structure, proper enforcement of legal securities, and establishment of what we call as DPI, that is Digital Public Infrastructure. And the banks and the regulator have another role. The regulator to ensure that banks have some sort of a mandatory lending to the MSMEs and monitors it. Banks have to see that they don't do MSMEs or banks or NBFCs, they don't do what should I say, in MSME lending as a normal corporate lending, but adapt to it various things, try to learn to know various other forms of collateral which the MSMEs can offer, like receivables, like goods sold but money not received, all those inventories. So there are various mechanisms, and also offer services customized to what the MSMEs need. So that is within the country. Outside the country, I think, while ministry, I think almost all the countries have a ministry of MSME. And most of the leading financial institutions also have an MSME vertical. But the talking between the, within the country also, the talking happens one way from ministry to the
Silo.
to the banks. And it doesn't go up from the banks to the ministry, because generally banks will be receptive to what the ministry is telling. I think we need to open up that culture. There has to be a two-way dialogue. And it would be a good idea if across the countries in South Asia, if some sort of an informal or even a formal, I would say, not informal, a group is established which consists of government officials, regulators, as well as main financiers in the sector, to exchange best practices and learn from each other.
Thank you. Alan?
Yes, sorry. So I think it's important to focus on what are the needs of the MSMEs. You have to focus on identifying their needs and determining how to support it, for example, for a microfinance institution level. What levels can be satisfied or can be achieved at the microfinance institution level, and at the same time look at possible options on a multi-stakeholder approach, identifying government institutions or even the private sector on how to support your MSME clients. So it really starts at the MSME level and what are their needs. So that's it, focus on the clients themselves.
Focus on the client. Thank you. Cheryl?
Yeah, I think I would maybe tackle this question from more from the financing perspective for microfinance institutions themselves, that they should, I think more conversation is needed, right? More open dialogue is needed. I think that's also easy to say, but it's also about really finding time to come together and connect, because this blended financing solutions will be the way for MFIs to scale up. And blended finance solutions across the widespread of financial intermediaries out there. And now we can even in the future imagine that family offices or philanthropic funds today that do not invest in microfinance may one day say that they would like to have more impact in the investments that they do, because also it is what the investors expect of them, that supporting microfinance and it's a way for them to achieve their goals, and it's also a win-win. So to do this, there is a need for more conversation to understand the needs, like what my previous speaker also mentioned about understanding the needs of the MSMEs and finding really tailor-made solutions, and to experiment, to pilot more pilot projects and financing mechanisms to see if they work, and then to report on it and to see whether it can be replicated.
Thank you. Pak Amam?
Thanks. So my closing statement will be MSME, I believe, needs empowerment more other than just access to financing. And fighting poverty, increasing financial literacy, and uplifting MSME needs relentless collaborative efforts among stakeholders. It's either regulators, both executive and legislative, banks, corporate as their corporate social responsibility, financial institutions, digital or IT providers, and most importantly, the MSME itself.
Thank you, Pak Amam. Hani?
Thank you so much. Actually, moving forward, again, I'm coming from outside the banking sector, but we are a financial institution. We provide funds for development. We work with the government, okay? So we have to, of course, governments should be interested in alleviating poverty, which is usually all governments are, hopefully. But then IFAD alone cannot do that. We have to collaborate across the board with everybody. With BRI Capital for sure, okay, with the think tanks and experts like Frankfurt School, and also learning from other countries, from Philippines and India and so on, bringing lessons from there and applying it where we are working here in Indonesia and other countries as well. So for us, the process is really multi-stakeholder. We are open for collaboration with all, whether it is for crop production in the agricultural sector. One of our upcoming projects, as I told you before this meeting, is in blue economy with Ministry of Marine Affairs and so on. So we think, working with also coastal communities, we would have great opportunity to collaborate with others for achieving our goal of reducing poverty. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So as we draw our conversation to a close, I want to thank all the speakers, panelists, and also for all the participants for staying until the last minute of these conversations. I noted that there are three keywords that, with regard to the empowerment and collaboration. One is contextual, number two is comprehensive, and number three is continuous. So it is clear that by working together, government, private sectors, academia, civil society, we can generate a more enabling environment for MSMEs to thrive. So let us carry forward this momentum from today's discussions, and let us work together to support and empower MSMEs as the vital engines of our growth and our economies. So thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your time in Bali. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so much for our moderator for the last session, and also all the panelists and all the speakers. Thank you so much. Okay, thank you. Yes, kindly return to your seat. We had already the group photo just now ready with the ministry. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, yes, finally we have reached the end of the last parallel thematic session of High-Level Forum on Multi-Stakeholder Partnerships 2024. On behalf of the committee, once again, we would like to thank you for all the participants for this event since morning until this afternoon, the last session. And thank you for your attendance. We apologize for the inconvenience during this event. I'm Putu Desi. Enjoy the rest of your days in Bali, and we hope to see you again next time. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Om Shanti 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 Om.